Well, hello, and welcome out to A Goodman's Tale. My name's Josh, and I am going to be your host. Here at A Goodman's Tale, we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty. We're going to talk about the good stories, the bad stories. We're going to talk about the fun stories, the challenging stories, some of life's most triumphant times, and some of life's most difficult times. Listen, we've all got a story. We've all got a tale that we can tell. The good times, the bad times, like I said, the rough times, times when we've needed a shoulder to cry on, and times when we've been able to party like a rock star. And so, without further ado, I want to ask that if you do enjoy these episodes, that you would like, share, and also subscribe. And until then. This is Josh, coming to you with A Goodman's Tale. Listen, one of the things we're going to do here at A Goodman's Tale is give you the word of the week. And this week's word is the word gnosko. It means to know. Jesus speaking in the book of Matthew during his Sermon on the Mount. It says that many are going to come to me in that day, and they're going to say to me, Lord, Lord. And he's going to look to them, and he's going to say to them, I never knew you. The word knew, the word know in the past tense, is the word gnosko. And the word gnosko means to be skilled in. It means to be intimate with. There's a vast variety of applications, but for the most part, it's to be aware of, to have knowledge, to perceive, to understand, to be resolved, and to be intimate, to be close to. And I love that one, to be skilled, to be experienced in. So Jesus is saying to those who are coming to him, he's saying, look, you know, you may have casted out demons and you may have healed the sick, but I was never skilled. I was never intimate with you. So depart from me. And immediately after that, Jesus goes into say that, the one who hears these words of mine and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who builds his house on the rock. And the one who hears these words of mine and does not do them, he will be a foolish man who builds his house upon the sand. And of course, we know the rest of the story. When the winds come and the rains fall and the floods rise, the one who has his house fixed on the rock is the one who remains, whereas the one who has built on the sand goes through great devastation. I want to be one of those individuals who hear those words and do those words. Build my house on the rock so that my Savior has a gnosko, an intimate, skilled and experienced in relationship with me. Listen, this week we're not going to have any guests. This week what we're really going to just jump into is talk a little bit about my story. Going to tell you things maybe that you have never heard, maybe things you've never known about. And these things that I'm going to share them with you. Not because these are things that I've tried to keep hidden. Oftentimes they're just points and topics that I don't talk about. And they're intimate experiences. And that's kind of why I chose that word to know, to be skilled in. Because one of the things I hope to do here is to allow us to become closer. So I can get to know you more and you can get to know me more. When we have guests on the show, we're going to get to know them better. We're going to hear about their stories, and these stories are going to be stories of triumph. They're going to be stories of tragedy. They're going to be stories of, again, the up times and the down times. But let's do this first episode, and let's talk about me, where I come from, where I've been, kind of some of the things that I've seen. And you need to know that throughout the Goodman's Tale, throughout these episodes, you're going to hear stories about myself and others that maybe you didn't know before. And one of those stories is at about the age of 7, he's now a Baptist minister at First Baptist Church of Hernando Beach. A man named Mr. Merkel, and he's now Reverend Merkel, drove the church van, and through my cousins somehow, Joy and Rob and Tanya, they linked up with me to have Mr. Merkel begin to pick me up on Sundays. And Mr. Merkel would come by every Sunday, tap his horn. I'd come out and go to church there at First Baptist Church of Hernando Beach. And through that, I ended up getting baptized, was able to talk my parents into beginning to attend church with me. At some point in this time, my dad was working at a power plant in Crystal River and had a crippling accident. And literally, he hurt himself and was unable to walk around. He walked around, like almost with an individual with like a humpback or, all hunched over. And it affected his sleep. They wanted to put him on crazy pain meds. And during this time too, going back a little bit before my dad decided to come back to church, both of my parents were addicts. And I can remember my dad growing marijuana down in our basement. I can remember coming out of my bedroom and individuals being over at the house and the kitchen table being full of everything from, weed to syringes to pills. And that was it was a part of our life. When Dad would sit down every evening, he had a can that was under his chair that he'd open up and he'd, roll a joint, and that's how he would spend his evening, drinking a beer and smoking a joint and just chilling out, right? And so this was kind of, I'll say, the soil in which my early years when I was raised. We were very, very, very poor. We would be evicted very often from these little tiny 2-3 bedroom single wide trailers. Have to sneak out, at night at times and hop from one place to another. We had all the normal impoverished things, being on welfare, getting the government cheese, all of those things. And if you're an individual who was raised in that, exactly what I'm talking about. And that was life for us. That was what we experienced. It's what we walked through. My dad finally got the job at the power plant, and goodness sake, experienced this tremendous back injury. We were actually beginning to do better financially. He was getting his life straightened out. He had turned around. He had literally had this vision from God where God spoke to him and said, listen, if you do not change this lifestyle, that within 1 year, you're going to leave your son fatherless and your wife a widow. And upon that, the very next time I asked him, invited him to come to church, he made the decision to come out with me and to be a part of the church service. And so, that's after Dad hurt himself. We spent months with him being, I don't want to say sick, but being just hunched over and hurting every day. And then came the fateful day, the story that many of you all know so well, Good Friday, 1982, when my grandfather comes and picks my dad up, brings us to Christian Service Center. Karen Spiro says to him, Emery, do you believe God will heal you? And he says, I believe God can heal me. No, Emery, that's not what I asked. Do you believe God will heal you? And they go back and forth over and over again. Finally, he says, yes, I believe God will heal me. Then she said, in the name of Jesus, he healed. And instantaneously, he was healed right then. Was able to bend down, touch his toes, ran in circles around the sanctuary. Things that he had not been able to do for months. This was a revolutionary moment in my parents' life, in my life, in Jennifer's life. Who at that time was maybe 2, 3, 4 years old. And radically life-changing moment. Dad is filled with the Holy Spirit, speaks in new tongues. He's healed, he's baptized, and he goes into ministry training school, and just begins this huge process. But during all of this, right, we were driving from Weeki Wachee, Florida, up to Clearwater, Florida, an hour-and-a-half drive, 3-4 days a week in order to attend church, in order to attend ministry training school, and be a part of everything that Christian Service Center was doing. In the midst of this, we were still living in Weeki Wachee, and my mom gave birth to my second sister. So it's myself, then we have Jitterbug, Jennifer, and this baby was Rebecca. She was born around 40 years ago right now, and beautiful baby girl. Her name was Rebecca Faith, and as a matter of fact, my daughter Rebecca is named after that Rebecca. And Rebecca Faith was beautiful. She was born at home. It was a majestic experience. My parents going through, this home birth, and just beautiful. And Then one day tragedy struck, right? Mom goes in and Rebecca Faith is not breathing. And we rush Rebecca to the hospital. They're able to resuscitate her several times, and goes back and forth, being resuscitated and losing her again, and being resuscitated and losing her again. And my dad always told the story like this. He said, at one point, a nurse came in and told him and my mom that they should just stop praying. That hope was lost, that Rebecca Faith passed. And they did. They took the nurse at her word, but come to find out, during that time, Rebecca was still literally fighting for her life. And Dad always held to the belief that that was just an individual symptom of discouragement, fear of an individual sent by the enemy, so that they would discontinue the fight for Rebecca's life. And when they stopped praying, Rebecca passed away. And this altered my dad's life, my mom's life, in such a tremendous way, because when he was healed and filled with the Holy Spirit, the evidence of speaking in tongues, when all of those things took place, that revolutionized their life. But when Rebecca Faith was born and died 5-6 months later, that literally ignited a passion, fire in my dad, in my mom, that he would do all that he could do for the very rest of his life to save every individual that he could possibly save, that he would bring as many people to the Lord as he could possibly bring to the Lord, that he would fight, he would wage the war against those principalities, against the powers, against the rulers of darkness of this age, that he would literally pour his life out on the altar of doing all he could to win souls and to make disciples. Now, if you're from Cliffdale, you know that phrase to be one of our, I'll say, mantras, one of our sayings, but you can know that it was at that moment that winning souls and making disciples began to be my mom, my dad's, hence mine, and my entire family's life ambition to win souls and to make disciples. And so, goodness sake, you want to talk about a whirlwind beginning then, right? We make this decision. Dad goes to Bible school, graduates Bible school. Literally within 1 year, we are on a flight with Delta Airlines with 12 banana boxes full of our stuff, like $50 in my dad's pocket, and a 3-month commitment to finish a Haitian discipleship training school in Moe, Haiti, with the Bennett family, Terry Bennett, Ruth Bennett, then my best friend Scott Bennett, his older sister Angie Bennett, and Josh Bennett. And so here we go. We're launched into full-time ministry on the mission field. Terry owned this small red Toyota pickup truck. We throw all 12 banana boxes in the back of the truck. You want to talk about an adventure, landing in Haiti, throwing the boxes in the back of the truck. I sit in the back of the truck on our 2-hour drive from Port-au-Prince to a port town called St. Mark. We lived in this small 2-bedroom house, and literally, guys, every day I sit back with fondness, and I'll dovetail this in with another story very quickly. Literally, part of my chores was to go out to a hand pump every day and hand pump water into 55-gallon barrels that we would use to both drink and shower with, and cook with, all of those things. It's interesting because part of that, just a short snippet of that tale, is that years later, probably 25 years later, Dad and I went back to that house, went back to that spot where we had lived all those years ago, that place that had been ignited through the passing of my younger sister. We went back to that house, and man, we sat there in silence and just stared for a moment, because so many good memories, so many challenges, so many difficulties. And literally, at this point, my dad's not a preacher. He's not a pastor. He's a construction worker. He's down, when I say to build a Haitian discipleship training school, I mean, literally, he was in the construction of building this Bible college for up and coming Haitian ministers, and he would go out there daily, and he would be a part of the construction. We fulfilled our 3-month commitment, and then, goodness sake, guys, then the challenges really began, because our church back home had committed that they would support us for 3 months. They pulled support on us, and suddenly we had $50 in monthly support that was committed by my grandma Dina and my grandpa Fleet, and that was all that we had to live on. Again, you want to talk about, if we thought being poor in the United States had been poor, being poor in Haiti is a whole another level of poor. Literally, times when we would go hungry, we cooked on charcoal. We lived in a house that had no electricity, no running water. It was a time when we literally bathed in the ocean, and then rinsed off with what little fresh water we had. Like I said, no electricity, but there on this house in Moe, where we filled up, check this out, guys, we filled up water beds with 5-gallon buckets of ocean water that we carried up to the second floor of this house, and literally used a funnel to pour in this water into the water beds. And my mom and dad slept on one water bed, and me and Jitterbug, we slept on the other water bed. I can still remember, just vivid memory as we plant this church in this house. We begin the very first beginnings, right, of ministry training school, what will become known as Gospel Team Outreach's ministry training school. Here is its birthplace. Here is where it all begins. Here is where it all starts. This impoverished missionary couple, they don't have enough food to eat. They don't have enough water to drink. We're cooking on charcoal. Literally, I would get up at 5 a.m. in the morning. Here I am, like 10 years old, getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I would stoke the coals and blow on them and get them ready, and I would start the early morning coffee, and my mom and dad would wake up shortly thereafter. I would have coffee ready for them, and we would begin our day of, Dad would, like I said, he began just training Haitian pastors. We began a church there in the first floor of the house that we lived in. For tithes and offerings, people oftentimes did not bring money, but would bring a chicken or a little bit of goat. They would bring coconuts, they'd bring bananas. And these were the tithes and offerings of missionary life in those early days of Haiti, of living there on the mission field. And so we went, we did this again for several months, and finally my mom came to the realization that, hey, my kids are gonna need an education. I'm around 10, Jen's around 5 years old, and they make the decision, right, to move us into Port-au-Prince, where Dad continues to commute an hour and a half out to Moe, 3, 4, 5 days a week, continues to do the Bible college, continues to do the church out there. All of those things continue. All the while, I'm going to school. My mom's working for the hotel, Caribbean Christian Center on Delma 31 in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Now, Dad worked there too on his days off. Subsequent events take place. I and Jen are going to school there at Caribbean Christian Center, and the individual who's managing the hotel decides he's going to step back. He's going to resign, move back here to the United States with his wife and family. And my dad is asked, he goes from like helping out as a construction worker and a bellboy to being asked if he would manage this place. He takes it by the helm, and goodness, guys, this place was, Dad's first huge assignment in the kingdom. We had planted the Bible college, we were doing the church, we were raising up young ministers, all of these things, but literally at the hotel, when my dad was put into the point of leadership of the Caribbean Christian Center, it had a restaurant, a full-fledged buffet restaurant. It had a small snack bar that did hamburgers and French fries, things like that. It had an American school. It had a bookstore. It had 2 churches, one an American service, the other a Haitian service, and then it had a hotel that saw hundreds of missionaries literally on a daily basis, sending those individuals out to do things like medical clinics and to hold crusades, just all of these powerful things. that are taking place and that are going on. And goodness, this went on for a few years, and this place literally was having some of the greatest impact in Haiti at the time. Thousands of individuals were changed and benefited because of what was taking place at the Caribbean Christian Center. Now, if you're old enough, you'll remember that during these days in Haiti was when Baby Doc Duvalier, Jean-Claude, was ousted out of Haiti. He was kicked out of Haiti. And there was pandemonium, guys, in the streets. People were celebrating what was called his secret police, or the Tonton Macoute. They were being killed and slaughtered and necklaced, which is a terrible one. The tires were put on their head, doused with gasoline, and these individuals would be lit on fire. And more than once, the police came out, the national police, shooting tear gas into the mobs. And I can remember, again, now I'm, I guess, 11, 12, 13 years old, and being tear gassed and the experiencing of these things. Finally, the individual who we're leasing the hotel from, and I'm going to draw this to an end in just a second. We'll call this the close of the Haiti years, and we'll jump back in here, some other time, or tell more of this story. But as these things are transpiring, as they're taking place, the general who we were leasing the hotel from comes in with his soldiers, having AK-47s, and he literally kicks us out of the hotel. He tells us he wants us out. He's not renewing the lease. By gunpoint, we're ousted out of the Hotel Caribbean Christian Center. The restaurants, the churches, the schools closed down just like that. In a moment, right? We consider, okay, Lord, where do we go from here? What do we begin to do? At this point, we move up to our house in Kinskov, Haiti, up in the mountains of Haiti. And again, we go from just one impactful thing to another impactful thing. We're still doing the church. We're still doing the Bible college. And then we see the launch of what is called Croisade des Miracles, the Crusade of Miracles. And we would literally go around the southern portion of Haiti, St. Mark, Moe, up and down Delma, Quadabouquet, all of these places holding these mass crusades, ministering to thousands upon thousands of individuals. One of the very first sermons I preached was in front of 15,000 people. We saw miracles literally on a nightly basis. We saw blind eyes, saw deaf ears. We saw individuals who had been demon possessed from the time that they were babies. We saw these individuals set free. We had encounters, just supernatural, powerful things transpiring and taking place. And again, we go from the Caribbean Christian Center, where we're moving, rocking, doing, and accomplishing, to now, right? We're doing these mass crusades where individuals, thousands upon thousands of individuals, are being saved, are being set free, are being healed, are being delivered. A very, very, very powerful time. And saw some of the greatest miracles that I've ever seen in my entire life during this time. And a small team comes down from a little city in North Carolina called Fayetteville. And those individuals who come down after spending a week with us on the mission field asked my dad if he would prayerfully consider moving to Fayetteville and being their pastor. My friends, I guess all I can say from there is that the rest really is history. And I'm going to close my story there because there's so much more, because that was 30 years ago, and I could go on about being one of the first individuals to bring Bibles into communist Russia after the Berlin Wall came down, tell you about individuals I've laid hand on, who've grown back toes, but those are all stories for another day. Right now, as we're kind of just drawing to a close, drawing to a conclusion, I want to bring up a second thing. So we have the word of the week, which we already went over, gnosko, and hopefully you have a greater gnosko of me after having heard this story. I want to also do what I call the rules to live by in the South. And these rules are going to go, and we're going to discuss everything from how to properly fry a fish to eating grits and common things that we say, like sir and ma'am, honey, darling, and dear, and to people we don't even know. But today's rule is rule number 15. And rule number 15, the Southern rule to live by in the South, number 15 is always greet. Whether you know the person or not, to say howdy or hello, hey there, how you doing, is a must. Anytime you're approaching somebody, you want to ask them a question, you always say, hey there first. Howdy, how you doing? It's kind of a little pre-qualifier and an opener before you begin. And there's absolutely nothing wrong in the South with people you don't even know as you're passing by on the street to throw up your hand and say, hey there, how you doing? And if you want to be real familiar, you can say, hey there, darling, how you doing? Looking mighty good. But what you don't want to say, right, is, what is it? I can't even remember now the phrase I'm thinking of. Well, bless their heart. That's not a good thing. Just going to cue you in on that. If somebody says, well, what about Joe? Well, bless his heart. That's never a good thing. I guess that can be rule number 15 and rule number 16 that I was able to give you today. Anyway, that's about all of our time. I want to thank you for joining us. Again, I'm Josh, and this is A Goodman's Tale. Remember, if you enjoy these, please like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, live your best life.